Alistair.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, right, Newman. How's it going?
Sorry about that. I didn't have a password, so I couldn't get in.
No, no worries. No problem. Thank you very much for joining us.
Sorry about that.
No, no stress. So, Alistair, yeah, thanks very much for taking time out of your schedule to chat to us
Sure.
back here in South Africa. I know it's where you grew up, so I'm sure you got a bit of a soft spot for us. And great to chat to you for a little bit.
No, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak back home and to hear the mother tongue again. So, last week I was on a call to Tennis South Africa. So I was speaking to the guys there, and it's always good to catch up. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you very much. Alistair, you've got lots of coaches, you've got players that are listening to you, you've got parents that are listening to you. So I'm going to try and direct a few of the questions so that everyone gets a bit out of it and everyone can hear a bit of your thoughts. Just a very quick bio on you. I can't run through it, otherwise we'll use the entire 30 minutes of you. But you're a leader in the field of athletic sports performance enhancement, a well-proven method called the McCaw method that has set the standard in providing world-class athletes and coaches with cutting-edge training techniques, products, and knowledge. A mindset performance expert with over 25 years experience. You've trained Grand Slam champions, PGA golfers, Olympians. You were a professional triathlete for 9 years. You competed in the world champs for five times. And as a performance mindset coach, you worked with Olympians as well as business leaders, and you're a best-selling author. So, Alistair, thank you for joining us here on DJ Coaching. We really appreciate it. I'm going to jump straight into the questions and ask you, my first one to you is, what defines you, or what defines your character? What makes you who you are?
Yeah, definitely. It's a combination of your beliefs, your values, your behaviors. I think those are the three most important things. Character is almost like culture. You talk about team culture. Culture is character, and your beliefs drive your behaviors, and your behaviors drive your outcomes. So it's very very similar. So definitely it comes down to that, a combination of beliefs, values, and character. Yeah.
Do you think the way you were brought up, in South Africa, the sport you played, your parents, that all contributed to that character and those beliefs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I write about it in my books, how grateful I am having been brought up in South Africa. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on a call to you guys, but I talk about that here in the United States or whenever I travel, because our schooling system is probably one of the best in the world when it comes to providing sports and providing extracurricular activities. Here in America, there are sports at the schools, but it's not there's not such a wide range as there is back in South Africa. The discipline that we had from a young age in the schools there was, something that I don't see in many schools around the world. For example, Europe, you have to join a club or you have to join an academy if you want to be part of a team, for example. So growing up in South Africa, and I know it's still like that as well, very, very rich in sports. That's why we have so many good athletes. Why, for such a small country, why we produce so many good athletes is because of the schooling system, the academies. The coaching standards is very, very high in South Africa. When you live in South Africa or when you live somewhere, you think everywhere else is better. And, something that I've learned is that the grass is not always greener on the other side. Yes, there's opportunities elsewhere. For example, in cricket, if, you get to a very high level and then obviously you play provincial or you want to play county in England, for example, those are the milestones, for example. But, one thing I'm very, very grateful for was that I was brought up in South Africa, and I know the sporting culture is very, very rich there. So you guys are lucky.
Absolutely. Let's touch a bit on that and the coach's side. Yeah, growing up as a young player or a young sportsman, you obviously had coaches that influenced you and made you who you are. Talk to me a bit about the role of a coach and how important that is to young players.
Yeah, for sure. There has to be a connection with the coach and the player. And, that's a two-sided thing that, is that the effort is going to come from both sides. But a connection is very, very important with the coach and the player. It's very important that there's a relationship built up, and that takes time because trust takes time. So a relationship is important. The more stronger the relationship is, the more trust there is, the more respect there is, the more honesty there is. And those are all ingredients to success in coaching and sports, for example. So Coach Wooden, the great basketball coach, said that teaching is coaching and coaching is teaching. It really comes down to the same thing. But talking about successful athletes of where they've come from, and I worked with Graham Smith when Graham was 17, 18, and they gave him to me for a year to nurture and to guide before he hit the big scene. He was at that time playing for Transvaal, which was Gauteng. Yeah. I think he only had a season there, and then he moved down to Western Province. So I lost a good client, but he went on to have a great career, apparently. We don't get to see much cricket here, but if I look at Graham, he had what I call coachability. He was a great listener. He was very, very hungry to learn, would ask a lot of questions. And for me, Graham was a big part of also my learning curve as well of what it really takes to make it. It's not necessarily, yes, you have to have the skills. Yes, you have to have the competence, but it's your openness to learning. It's your openness to, the great players, no matter how much they know, they're still open to learn. And just using an example of Graham, because obviously he was the South African captain and you guys will know him. I knew him when he was 17, 18, before he hit the big time. And just a very, very focused player, made good choices, instead of going out and, being at the parties or being the life of the party, he was at home. He was a scholar of the game. I'm not saying it's, you can't go to a party or whatever, but you make good choices. Yeah. And, there's a lot of players that were in Graham's era that, that were just as good as Graham, but didn't make the right choices. So this is definitely something I'd love to get across to the audience, today is building good habits, building good routines, making good choices, especially in your teenage years, younger years, can set you up for life. So, yeah.
Touching on that, I mean, how important is it for players? They always talk about having goals, but you set a goal as, we want to win the game, or say I want to make a provincial side. And when you get there, you kind of reach your echelon. What's that higher power? What are we looking at more? What can players get more? What are they looking at?
Yeah, again, I call it the other 20 hours of the day. If you've read Champion Minded, my second book, I talk about the other 20 hours of the day, and that comes down to lifestyle. Because there's only so much time you can practice in a day. So a cricket practice together with your strength session, your gym session is maybe 3 hours, 4 hours. What are you doing the other 20 hours of the day? And successful people that I've been around, that's in athletes, that's in corporate, whatever it may be, they have structure to their day, and they wake up with a game plan. So they don't just wake up and, okay, what am I going to do today? They have structure. They have a plan. They have a journal, which I always encourage young athletes and young people to have, and anyone for that matter, is to have a journal. So one of the habits I got into at a very, very young age was the night before the day, I would write down my plan for the next day, wake up time. I was very, very disciplined in those areas, because this is another thing. I was not the most talented athlete. I was not the most talented kid. In fact, in school, I wasn't in the track and field team for the 800 meter and 1500 meter. There was two guys that was faster than me, but I was the only guy that went on to compete for South Africa from my school in that sport, because I knew I was a late bloomer. I knew I had to work harder. I knew if I made the other 20 hours in my day better with structure and eating well and sleeping and all these things, that good things would happen, and they eventually did. So, that's so important, is finding structure to your day, having routines, building good habits. Yeah.
When you work with a new player, do you help him set up those structures and those routines to try and get him to achieve at the highest level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that definitely is a role of a leader, role of a coach, is to help provide the player with structure to their day. Obviously, parents as well. That's a great thing, is and they do already provide structure to their kids, because there's school, and then there's rides to practices, and there's other siblings in the family as well. They probably have other things going on. So there's a lot of structure going on there. But definitely, it was one of the things that helped me from a very early age, and which I still do today. I still have that same habit of at night planning my next day, and waking up with a game plan, waking up hitting the ground running, for example. And I think it's those things that have given me success in what I've done, because I was just like anybody else, growing up in South Africa. But I had a vision, is that I wanted to be a professional athlete from a very, very young age. At first, it was going to be tennis, but that didn't work out because we didn't have the finances. You get to a certain level where you need better coaching, and you need to travel, and you need better equipment. And we just didn't have that as a family. So I took up running because it costs you nothing. And, my point here is that it's about the heart. It's about how much you really want to be a success, or how much you really want to be seeing yourself batting at Newlands or the Wonders or the Oval one day, or whatever it may be. I saw that dream every day. I saw that vision every day, not playing cricket necessarily. And I did play cricket in school. But I saw that vision every day. I even had things stuck on my bedroom wall, Allistair McCaw, world champion, all these things from a very, very young age. And, my new course, the Champion Minded online course that's just come out now, I talk about case studies of Michael Phelps, of Novak Djokovic, these people that when they were interviewed at 10, 11, they were just like any other kid. Nobody knew that these would be great athletes. Of course they were, good players at a young age, but it was those small little things, and those are things I see in champion quality. They're thinking about it all the time, and Graham was the same. Graham loved cricket. You have to love something if you're going to be successful in it. If I was to say to you, DJ, if I was to say to you, sorry, Brendan, you're going to play the piano, and you're like, well, I don't like playing the piano. I said, well, you're going to play the piano because I think you're good. It's not going to go very far. You'll probably do it, but it's not a passion for you. It's not something that you'd love to do. So to be successful, you have to love what you're doing. And not every day is going to be great. Not every day you're going to be at your best. And that's that's the mark of a great athlete or somebody successful, is that they're able to control their emotions better. They're able to control their bad days better. I don't believe in bad days. I believe in bad moments. But how quickly can you get out of that? How quickly can you turn a negative mindset into a positive mindset? These are the qualities of very successful people and athletes.
Yeah. One of your chapters in your book, you say that talent is overrated. So that obviously leads on to that. I mean, you obviously believe that it's not just about talent.
Absolutely. Look, you've got to have some talent. I mean, let's not kid each other. There's got to be some coordination ability and so on and so forth. But I don't like to put a percentage on it. They always say, are you born a champion or you made a champion? Well, it's a little bit of both. You've got to be lucky with the parents you've chosen. You've got to be lucky with the genetics you've got. You've got to be lucky with the environment you're in, the coaches that have been around you at a very young age. These are all things that add up to later successes. So you've got to be lucky. As a kid at 7 years old or 12 years old, you don't get to necessarily choose those things. So these great athletes had those things had those things around them. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you, the individual, your desire, your hunger. One of the traits I saw in great athletes is that they're the ones that are almost annoyingly wanting to play more or be at practice longer. And, mom and dad are saying, come on, we got to go, or get inside, because you're playing out in the garden, for example. It's those little signs I've seen in great athletes from a young age, that I saw them go on to greater things. They're not getting pushed to practice. But yeah, for talent, you need a little bit of talent. I mean, that's obvious. You need the skill, but it's a big part of my life is that I wasn't the most talented growing up, but I knew I could outwork anybody. I knew I could work harder than anybody, and I'm not bragging about that. It's just like, okay, I've got to make up some things. I always say, be the best at the things that don't require talent. And what is that? That's hard work. Have a better attitude than the next person. Pitch up early. Show the coach that you're hungry by being there 20 minutes before warming up, or getting your pads ready, or whatever it may be. Staying afterwards in the nets, or staying afterwards getting some catching practice. Whatever. These little things are the traits of champions. Doing enough is not enough. Pitching up to practice on time and leaving on time, that'll get you good.
Yeah.
But I know, there's players that are listening to this right now that want to be great, and that's fine, because every person has an ability to be great. But are you willing to do what it takes? And are you willing to give up certain things that don't contribute to, reaching a very, very high level?
Yeah. Talk to me about the champion mindset. I mean, you've obviously, everything's based on that. What is the champion mindset?
Yeah. How long have you got? I mean, it's a very broad question. Well, I mean, champion-minded is, again, what we just spoke about. You don't have to be the most talented. It's about heart. My running coach back in school, and her name was Caroline Foster, an amazing coach. She's, in fact, probably the two most influential people in my life, but, my mother and her. Very, very lucky to have good coaches in school. She always said, you run with your heart and your legs. And, your legs might be tired. You're coming down the back straight of the 800 meter, that feeling where you can't feel your legs, and you would switch to your heart. And, we look at great athletes like, Sachin Tendulkar, and I got to know Sachin, and I got to know some of the Indian players. In fact, back in 2003, 2001, I worked with Bob Woolmer, and many probably won't know who Bob is, but Bob coached South Africa during the Hansie Cronje era, Alan Donald, Lance Klusener. I mean, it was just an amazing team back then. And Bob was the coach. And in 2001, Bob and I were in Holland, and we worked on the ICC World Developing Countries. So those were countries at that time like Canada and Scotland and Bangladesh and Ireland and so on and so forth. And, just an amazing man to work with. And again, the champion mindset is surrounding yourself with good people. That's where I'm going on this point. Is it's important to surround yourself with good people. If the people in your circle are not contributing to your future, then, you have to reconsider that. If you've got friends at school that are not contributing to where you want to go in your school career and where you want to go in your life and your cricket career, you've got to reconsider that, because this is the lesson of life. You're going to have to lose some people along the way that aren't contributing to your greater good, aren't contributing to your goals. It might be that kid in class might be super funny or whatever, and that's fine. You can be friendly, but, is it someone that you really want to hang out with because they go to parties and they're just not good influences, for example. So yes, the champion mindset, we could go on forever with that, but it's about your environment. It's about surrounding yourself with good people, positive people. It's about putting in the work. And again, being a scholar. If you want to be great in the game of cricket, enough is not enough. And in fact, in anything, you've got to be a scholar of it. It's something, you're reading, and you're watching video, and you're watching, all these things. That's what a champion mindset is.
Brilliant. Allistair, if we go on to, there are obviously coaches and their players here. We speak about a purposeful practice, where you say a lot of players sometimes they arrive at practice early, they just practice, but that's not it. Speak to me a bit about a purposeful practice.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, when you go to practice, your coach has, the plan laid out for you, which is great. But with what intention and what focus are you going to that practice? Are you going through the motions of what your coach has asked you to do? Or are you really diving into it? Great athletes, I'll use an example of Kevin Anderson. Kevin I helped for 4 years until 2018. So I was with Kevin from 14 to 2018, and he made an incredible leap at that stage, played 2 Grand Slams, had a great team around him. So by no means am I saying that I was responsible for that. He had a great team around him.
Yeah.
But Kevin was very curious. Kevin was always asking questions. Kevin always came to practice with questions. And that's purposeful. As in, he'd be asking questions about the previous day's practice, or he was very, very dialed in. He would know exactly the amount of repetitions we did last Wednesday. And I'm thinking, wow, I mean, I can't even remember 2 days ago. Of course, I would write things down, but he would remember those things, which tells me that he's very dialed in. He's not coming to practice just to hit balls and clock 2 hours and go, okay, that's it, time up. Yeah. So purposeful is he came with a plan. Also, we talk about the mindset being so important in sports. Well, let me ask you this, especially the players there. With what mindset are you going to practice? Are you going to practice with a mindset goal? So, for example, are you working on a mantra, for example, on your when you're focusing in the nets, or whatever it may be, your self-talk, your body language? We look at, and I know I'm going back in time here, and a lot of players that are on this call probably won't remember them, but the coaches will. But you looked at the body image or the body language of a Jonty Rhodes, or you looked at the energy of a Herschel Gibbs at point, and they intimidated batsmen because of their energy, because of their body language. It's one of the most underestimated things is, body language and energy. So are you working on those things in practice? Selectors are no longer just looking at the skills. Of course, skills important. And I say that again, but they're looking at the energy you're bringing to the team. What are you contributing to the rest of this team?
Yeah.
We've seen great players in basketball teams and soccer teams, for example, who might have been the best player, but they weren't the best for the team. So, these are things that getting back to your point about, purposeful practice, that there's so many things that you can work on in a practice besides the drills and the skills that the coaches provided for you.
Yeah. And obviously in the current situation we are in globally, you've got a lot of young players that are stuck at home, and it's tough to keep the motivation going when no one really knows what's going on. How do we keep players motivated? How do they motivate themselves? That there's light at the end of the tunnel. They are going to be getting back to what they love doing.
Yeah, well, for one thing, there's controllables and uncontrollables, and we can't control the situation right now. We can only abide to what's been asked for by our government and the restrictions and social distancing and so on and so forth. But yeah, of course, it's not easy for anybody. We haven't been through this. The closest was probably back in 2008 with the recession here in the United States when I actually came here. And then before that, it was the Great Depression in 1929 or something. So we haven't had this before, but or experiences in our lifetime. But there has been many of these moments. We just think about back to the biblical times with the plague. There was the plague, for example. So these have been going on. But here's the thing: is that we're pretty fortunate today because we have technology. 20 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to have this call. Making a phone call was extremely expensive. We had fax, and we had, good gracious, before that, telegram. I'm showing my age here, but it's not that bad. If like I said, you have a game plan for your day, you achieve some goals for the day. So, for example, some exercise, working on your skills, for example, working on your reaction skills, maybe working on your mindset by doing an online course or reading something from a book or a good biography of a sports person or somebody that you're interested in.
Yeah.
But we're very, very fortunate. It's just think about many years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do these things. We didn't have technology and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's, I believe that we're getting on the other side of it. And here's another thing. This has probably made a lot of you realize how much you love the game of cricket, or if there's any other sports codes on here or whatever it is that you haven't been able to get to. Maybe it's, there's some parents out there that maybe you go to a weekly art night or whatever it may be, and you realize how much you miss that, how much you love that. So it's really a good time of self-reflection, I think, for a lot of us, and asking some questions of where we can get better, how we can get better. So yeah, I mean, I always believe in putting a negative situation into a positive, which is the way to go.
Brilliant. Allistair, we just touch on a bit of team culture. How do you help instill culture into a team? And do you use stories and themes to help create a culture? If you look at like a New Zealand rugby team, they have a mantra that comes from the Maoris that they live by. How do you install that in a team? How do you create a culture in a team like that?
Yeah, culture starts with obviously the leader. So the leader, sets the culture. He or she sets the culture. So, first of all, we have to define what culture is. And this is a question that it's a buzzword, culture.
Yeah.
And I always describe it like Brexit, is that we've heard of Brexit, but we don't know exactly what it is. And culture is the same thing. But getting back to how we started this call, culture is a set of beliefs or values which drive behaviors, which drive outcomes. Think about that again. So it's your beliefs that drive your behaviors, and your behaviors drive your outcomes. So that is, first of all, that is what culture is all about. Culture is not a fancy slogan up on the wall or something on the back of your shirt, which is motivating. And that's fine. If, you have that, that's great. I like wearing shirts that have motivational things on them, for example, but that's not culture. Culture is, I like to describe culture as an experience of when I come to your facility, the experience I have there is your culture. Or the experience if I was to visit one of your homes, for example, I would have an experience visiting you. That is your culture within your home. The behaviors that are allowed, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. So that's what culture is. So, culture starts with the leader. It's what standards are very important. In my first book, 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach, the chapter number 1 is standards for a reason. It's because setting your standards will result in the culture that you have and driving those standards. That's where it all starts. Just like you enter into an agreement in a contract, those are standards that we both know where we stand here. So, great cultures, great academies, great teams drive very, very high standards, and not everybody will aspire to those. Not everybody will like your standards or your rules, for another word, but these are the things that drive high disciplined and very successful cultures.
And would you follow that exact route working in a business and in sport? Would be the same?
Absolutely. Where there's a team of people, it comes down to the same thing: is how do we work together for the vision, to create, to achieve the vision. And, your culture is your people. Yeah. Your culture is your people, that is your culture. So, that's very, very important, as well as, know what your standards are, make them very clear, make sure before a player or parent signs up for the academy, they understand the standards, they understand the rules. So there's no false expectations later on. Something that Jurgen Klopp does, the Liverpool. And I was on a call yesterday with a soccer panel, and we were chatting about Jurgen Klopp and the culture there at Liverpool. And one of the things that he does before he starts with a player, he might sign a great player, or before he signs a great player, he'll ask them, so that from the beginning, you might not make the starting 11 every Saturday or every time we play. You might have started in your previous team, but here you might not start. Are you okay with that? Before he signs a player, and there's false expectations of that player because they started at the previous club, that now they're going to be starting every Saturday for Liverpool. That's not the case. So expectations are very, very important. Every parent out there thinks that their kid is or should be, on the team or opening batsman or whatever it may be. And I get that. However, it's important that those expectations are put down, what the criteria is of what you look for. Necessarily making the most runs last Saturday doesn't make you the best batsman in the team. So there's this false indication on performance over a season tells me how good you are in your bowling figures or your batting stats or your fielding, etc. That tells me a little bit more about your consistency. But one good performance on Saturday afternoon doesn't make you, that's not your average. Yeah.
And one of the big words there is obviously consistency. And for the players listening, consistency is a huge part of the game and going forward and achieving.
Absolutely. I mean, it's consistency in everything. Consistency in your habits, your routines, your daily structure. And over time, those they all accumulate. Yeah. Getting back to the book, I have a chapter called Win the Day, which you probably have heard about. And what does that mean? That means that to win the big day, talking about in the future, be it that a goal of playing for your province or playing for, South Africa, whatever it may be, is that you have to win today. Yeah. You have to win the small little things that you're doing today. And that's what it is. It's an accumulation of days and months and years, and they say it takes at least 10 years to get to an elite level, sometimes a little bit more, but it's 10 years of consistency.
Yeah, 100%. Allistair, I know we've run a little bit over half an hour, and I really appreciate your time.
Sure, I can do another 5 minutes if you want.
No perfect, problem. Yeah. if you're chatting to the players that are on now, and then chatting to the parents and coaches. Maybe start with the players. What would be sort of one of the biggest guidelines you'd give players? And then what would be the guideline you'd give coaches and parents going forward?
Yeah, for players, understand that, progress is not a straight line up. Progress, in fact, actually I have it here. That's what progress looks like. It's can you see that?
Yeah.
So progress is a mess. So all I want to say to you right now is, keep the vision alive. Understand that, progress is not a straight line up. So maybe you're going through a batting slump right now, or bowling or whatever it may be. Keep the faith, keep working hard. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, because, you will progress. That line will eventually go up. I don't know of one athlete that's had a smooth ride ever, so expect to have these challenges, work through them. Understand that when you're in this mess, as I had there on the piece of paper, that is actually where you're making progress. So keep working hard, stay coachable, stay curious, ask questions, provide feedback, be the best at the things that don't require talent, because these are what coaches are looking for. They're looking for what you bring to the culture. Culture's become a massive thing now in team sports. Is you might be a good player, but here's the truth. There's another 100 that are just as good as you.
Yeah.
Why should we select you? So be good at those. For parents, very important that everybody understands their role. Parents, obviously, in emotional support, obviously financial support, the car rides, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But understand that it is your kid's journey. That's very important. Of course, they want to make you proud. But a bad performance, that's sport. Put it away. Don't talk about it in the car on the way home, or leave it for another time. Also, parents, if there's something that you don't like in there, here's the thing: there's no perfect academy, there's no perfect club, there's no perfect coach, there's no perfect scenario. As I mentioned in the beginning of this call, the grass is not always greener on the other side, even though it might look like it. So, understand that coaches are doing their best in the facility. They're not always going to get it right. If there's something that you don't like or don't agree with, do it professionally. Either have a meeting with a coach or a phone call, whatever. Don't transmit that information to your child. That's their place where they have fun, and so on and so forth. Just like you would do with school. Make it. So I would say that for the parents, support, love the game. Your kids are growing up very fast as well, so enjoy the moment, so to say. And then coaches, definitely, keep investing in yourself, communicate well. I know, that's one area where we all can get better. Understand that parents need to be kept in the loop as much as possible with what's going on. That's something I had to work on personally in my coaching career. And, if you're in coaching for the wrong reasons, that's going to come through. This should be a vocation for you. This should be something you love to do. Coaching is leadership. It's about serving others. It's about making others better. And, that's probably the little bit of advice or information I'd give for, athletes, players, parents, and coaches.
Allistair, thank you very much. I want to finish with 5 quick questions. I know you finish your podcasts like this, so that's how I'm going to finish it. Your favorite book?
Good question. There's a few. Probably Leading by Alex Ferguson.
Okay.
I'd probably say that is. I also enjoy. I'm just like looking across at my bookshelf here, which I know which is cheating in a way, but there's so many good ones. Good to Great is a good book as well. Unstoppable is a good book, which is a good book for athletes to read. Unstoppable by Dave Anderson, I think it is.
Okay.
So that's a really good book to read.
Perfect. Your favorite sportsman or woman?
Man, I should have asked myself these questions earlier, right? It probably was Paula Radcliffe, the world marathon record holder from a few years back. Probably I would go with that still. Athlete, I have a few. Obviously, I know Roger Federer. Roger is just a great person. For me, it's not just about being a great athlete. It's about being a good person. And Roger is just such a great guy. Loves his cricket as well. I remember us playing. When I was in Dubai working with players, Roger was with us, and we'd play some cricket after the practice. With the tennis racket, and
Sure.
he's a good medium pacer, so gets a little bit of swing on it as well. So yeah, definitely Federer. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Leaders that you look up to personally?
Yeah, definitely Alex Ferguson would be one. Jurgen Klopp would be another. I know that's on the sporting side.
Yeah.
Angela Merkel, the German chancellor. I think for such a big country in Europe that she's been a real steady leader.
Yeah.
And especially there's not many women leaders in government, for example. So I think that's been a massive inspiration to me. I've like I said earlier in the call, my two greatest influences were my mom and a female coach as well. So definitely Angela Merkel. Is there anybody else? Nelson Mandela. I would have loved to have met Nelson Mandela, to be honest, but never did, unfortunately, because we grew up in that era of the 90s in South Africa, which was a fascinating time. So yeah.
And one trait you would look for in a leader?
Of course, trust is the obvious one, but empathy.
Okay. All right, brilliant. And then the last one, the South African bushveld or the Florida beach? Which one? You have to choose one.
Probably the wave pool at Sun City.
Fair enough. Brilliant.
Because
thank you very much.
That's in the bush, and it's water in the beach as well. So how's that one?
No, that's fine. We'll accept that. As long as we're in South Africa.
Exactly. I can't wait to come back there. So I was there
Brilliant.
2 years ago. Yeah. So anyway,
I
wish you guys
back.
all the best. Yeah, I wish you guys all the best, and keep working hard, and also just stay productive during this time.
Awesome. Allistair, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it, and keep well. All the best.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Ciao.